You're looking good, Eric.
I made it.
Richard, good evening. You're looking good, Eric.
Hi.
I made it.
You made it. I wasn't sure if you were coming here or not.
Richard, good evening.
Hi, good evening. Hi. Heather's here too. She's just on the phone. She doesn't have a video. I wasn't sure if you were coming here or not.
Richard, good evening.
Hi.
Hello.
Have a video. I wasn't sure if you were coming here. Hello.
Hi, Jonah.
Good evening. How's
Donna.
it going?
Good, sir.
Awesome.
I went grocery shopping this morning. The final run before Christmas. It was horrible. I
I've
even
got
went
one more.
early, and it was still horrible.
I try to go at lunchtime more often anymore. Seems
Well,
to-
usually, I've been going early on Monday since the pandemic started. I used to go real early, like 7 a.m., but that's too early. I don't have to get up that early anymore. 5 days left, and I'm done.
Wow. That's wild.
And actually, school's closed. You're closed. University's closed for break, isn't it?
Wednesday.
Wednesday. Yeah, Friday was our last day. Although we've been closed, we've been virtual for a couple of weeks now.
Hmm. Yeah, that seems pretty standard these days.
Yeah, my daughter-in-law teaches at a small school out near Lima. Oh my God, the whole school had it. Staff, kids, and all.
Wow.
That was a disaster. Well, they wouldn't shut down.
It's 7 now. We're missing, oh, he just started. Never mind. Dave was he had said he was coming and he's joining now. And then we should be good, Jonna.
Awesome. Thanks, Bridget.
Good.
Dave Mails here. If you
I
can
think
hear
we
me.
have everyone. The applicant is also on, and I think we have all the members.
Tremendous. In that case, I'd like to call to order the December 21st, 2020 Board of Zoning Appeals meeting for the City of Kent. Roll call, please.
Dave Mail.
Paul Salmon.
Tim Starr.
And Jonna. All five of us are here. All right. Variance requests will be considered in the order that they appear on the agenda. Each variance applicant or their representative will first explain the request to the board and will respond to board questions. The board will then hear statements from persons supporting the variance, followed by statements from those persons opposing the variance. All persons making statements will do so under oath and shall state their name and address for the record. Their testimony shall be directed to the board and not to the audience. If a member of the audience wishes to ask a question of one of the speakers, he or she shall first be recognized by the chair of the board and direct the question to the chair. The chair will then direct the question to the appropriate witness. This will allow the meeting to be conducted in an orderly manner. If written statements have been provided to the board, they will be included in the record of this meeting. At the chair's discretion, they may be read into the record during the meeting. After all testimony has been taken, the board will discuss and review the request. Generally, the board will decide to approve or deny each requested variance at the meeting that it hears the testimony. Some decisions may be continued for further review.
The strict application of the provisions of the zoning code. In every instance where the board grants or recommends a variance, there must be a finding by the board that the strict application of the provisions of the zoning code would result in practical difficulties or unnecessary hardship, inconsistent with the general purpose and intent of the zoning ordinance. 2, that there are exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions applying to the property involved or to the intended use or development of the property that do not apply generally to other properties in the same zoning district. And 3, that the granting of such variances will not be of substantial detriment to the public interest or to adjacent property owners or improvements in such districts which the variance is sought, and will not materially impair the purpose of the zoning ordinance.
The Board of Zoning Appeals operates according to the provisions of the Kent City Zoning Code, which provides for the establishment of the board. Members of the board, Kent citizens serving without pay, visit sites and hear evidence both pro and con at public meetings before carefully and conscientiously rendering a decision. After a decision has been made, the case is closed for the board, as there is no provision in the code for the board to reopen a case. If the petitioner disagrees with the findings of the board, there are only 2 proper procedures. One is to resubmit a revision of the request that is more compatible with the code, and the second is to institute legal procedures in the Common Pleas Court.
If anyone is going to be testifying in front of the Board of Zoning Appeals, if you please raise your right hand. Mr. Cohen, that'd be you. Do you?
Let me unmute too.
Very good. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you give before the Board of Zoning Appeals shall be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. New business, our one order of new business today, BZ 20-025, JKC Land Company LLC. This is regarding the vacant parcel at the corner of Harvey and Lake Streets. The applicants are requesting 2 variances. The first is a variance to allow 10 dwelling units per acre, where a maximum of approximately 8 dwelling units per acre is permitted, a variance to section 1133.01, and 2, a 20-foot variance from the 30-foot minimum rear yard setback to allow a new building to be constructed 10 feet from the rear property line, a variance of 1133.04B. I'm assuming, Jerry, you are here to speak on behalf of the requests. Is that accurate?
Yes, I am.
Excellent. If you would do so, that'd be great. Thank you.
The first variance for the density, the zoning calls for approximately 8 units per acre. This is 1.22 acres. So if I follow the zoning strictly, I'm allowed to build 9.78 acres or something along that line. So I'm requesting a variance and get to 10. The second variance is again, it's a tough one because this is a corner lot and there's 2, well, there's only one rear lot and they take the shortest frontage and the other one becomes the rear lot. So the southernmost exposure, which is along Harvey, would become the rear lot, and the zoning calls for a 30-foot setback. We'd like to ask for 10 for 2 reasons. By a 30-foot, it gets very, very tight, and it's buildable, but it's just very, very tight. And secondly, did I just lose something?
I'm putting the site plan up, sir.
Okay. And secondly, the sight lines as you're driving down Harvey Street would look different if you had a 30-foot setback versus a 10-foot. It's more uniform if you have a 10-foot setback as you run down the Harvey Street. And you're looking for the next one. Yeah, there you go. We're not removing any trees. To my knowledge, there might be something in the tree line that has to come down, but we'll replace that obviously, but there's no trees being removed. And you can see, well, I guess you can't see. It's a 10-foot, I believe, in between them right now. If I had to go to the original setback at 30 on the rear yard, that would be, I forget the magic number, but it was very close. And it was something that I'd be willing to build, but I don't think anybody'd like it. And that's the gist of it. Any questions?
Questions from the board?
Not at this point.
Not I.
I guess I'm curious, you mentioned something about a previous set of plans. And so I guess I'm curious if in that previous set, it took into account the 30-foot setback.
I've been on this, I've owned this project for 15 or 20 years ago. I came to you with some variances for 224 unit apartment building, or 212 unit, a total of 24, that was going to be a LEED certified building. And that was back when LEED was hot. And you rightfully said no. And I understand that at the time. It was a different story, but in any case, I understand that. So I'm not sure if you're talking about those plans or the plans that we were working with to come up with this. There was a plan that we had that I don't believe I shared with you, that showed everything that would meet the codes, but the buildings are very, very tight.
Okay.
To do that.
Yep. That was my curiosity, was specific to this project. You just had made reference to another set of plans, and I was just curious.
Yeah, those were internal plans that we did, and and I elected not to go that way. I elected to ask for the variance because of the spacing. There was fire safety issues. There was just, but I think one of the biggest things was the continuity of the spacing as you go down Harvey.
Thank you. Anything from Dave or Tim at this point?
I don't have any questions.
Okay. At that point, seeing that there's no one here from the public to participate, public comment can now be closed.
We have letters.
We do have letters. Thank you for mentioning that, Paul. So there were letters from two neighbors. I'm trying to bring those up now. Too many things on too many screens.
I could you want me to share those up, Jonna?
That would be awesome. Thanks so much.
The first one here is from, I'm not sure how you say the last name, Choir, I believe, Barb and Donald. Can you all see that, or do you want it read for the record?
I read through it when it came from Heather. Did everyone else have an opportunity to read it?
Yes.
Yes.
So I think it's worth noting this property is 3 addresses south, I believe, of the proposed construction on Harvey. And overall, their concerns were additional multi-units, noise and additional traffic, and potential light spillover. And they said under no circumstances would they be in favor of any variances. So, thank you, Bridget.
Okay, now the property is 2 doors down from the corner property. There's 2 properties between the
Correct.
property we're considering and this individual's house, and they're on the east side of Harvey.
Yep, and the second letter is from kind of a little bit further south, a lot or so south, and across the street on the other side of Harvey.
Correct. Yeah, they're one end back from the corner lot between Steele and Harvey.
So this individual seems to be opposed to the setback change. And most of the rest of the letter doesn't really pertain to zoning specific issues.
And if I could make a comment, these sound like they were complaining about the project as presented 15, 20 years ago.
Hmm.
It's the same things I heard 15, 20 years ago. And at 15, 20 years ago, it did make sense.
Sure.
Well, one of them I noticed mentioned the apartment house that is across the street from your property on the corner, be the
Yes.
southwest corner. It sounds like that's not a totally pleasant property at all times. There's been some issues there.
I used to own that property. I've sold it probably 10 years ago, but those are nice. There's nothing wrong with those apartments. I mean, if they're not watching the people, then sure, there's going to be some issues, but those are nice apartments.
Oh, it's a nice building. I think they're complaining about maybe some of the tenants' behavior, but that's
Yeah.
one of
Neither
those
here nor
things in a
there.
college town that you have to live with.
Well,
You
that's,
should probably focus on the variance request, Paul.
Yeah, it has
Yeah.
no variance on the request or no bearing on the request,
Right.
but it was mentioned in the one letter.
these,
So-
I am targeting 55 plus for these structures, these homes.
Now, my wife brought up a question. This is a tough one whenever we have rental properties. Can you legally keep college students out of there, which sometimes bring in these slightly unfavorable behaviors? I don't know how that works.
I'll interrupt.
So there are laws there. Yeah. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
I mean, I guess there are rules that you can do age restricted housing. That is something you can do if you go through all the proper steps, but you certainly cannot, if someone happens to be 55 years old and a college student, you can't ban them for that reason.
The owner of the property needs to get a designation through the federal government that it's age restricted housing and designate the age.
Okay.
Maple Brook, Four Seasons, those were what are called age restricted 55 and up housing. The developer has indicated that is what he is going to seek as well. However, without that formal designation, it is open under fair housing law to anyone who would rent.
Mm-hmm. So I wondered, thank you for the clarification.
All right. So we will go ahead and close public comment at this point.
I've got a couple of questions. I didn't get a zoning map on this one, so I don't know what the zoning is going up the side street. What are the side yard setbacks going up the side street off of Lake?
On Harvey there?
And Harvey, you mean?
Yeah.
Heather,
On
can you? answer
Harvey,
that? Yeah, thanks.
yep. On Harvey, it is all zoned R2, and the side yard setback is 10 feet. So if this lot were to be subdivided somehow, it would be side yard then, and it would meet the code at 10 feet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And
Is
is
My
R2
it-
apologies for
also-
not getting you a map. I'm sorry.
That's all right. Quick
Is
question.
R2 also go ahead, I'm sorry, I walked on you, Benjamin.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just, R2 is also the zoning code where this property is located.
Now, this property is located in an R3 zone.
Oh, so it's a little denser. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
And the property to down Lake Street, the property adjacent on Lake Street, who owns that property, or what is its intended use? Isn't it the school or something?
Are you talking about to the east?
I don't have my directional and I
Yeah, it
can't
would
see.
be 900 Lake Street, the next property immediately to the east on Lake Street.
It's actually a preserve that was donated by the Dix family to, and is not allowed to be developed. It was donated to the city, to Parks and Rec. So it is limited to staying as, I don't think the word was actually a nature preserve, but it was something similar to that. So it is not to be developed.
Okay.
Okay, so
That's
that
what I'm-
eliminates neighbors. I think the school mows it.
Do you have anything else, Benjamin?
Nope, go ahead, Paul.
Well,
So,
I think well, I'll address the first variance first. We're talking about 0.25 units variance. So I don't know what that is of a percentage, because if you follow the way it's code written, he'd be allowed to have 9 3/4 units. So technically, if one of those just had half, he'd meet the code. And by the way, did everybody see the front layout? They look very nice from the street view.
Yes, very nice.
Tim, it sounded like you had a question.
not really a question, but more of a comment. The first thing being that in codes that when you do the math and you come up to 9.7 whatever units, you do not round up. So the restriction would be down to 9 units. And if we go to 9 units, there's no need for the setback variance. So I think Mr. Cohen's interpretation of rounding up to 10 units then necessitates the setback variance. So I think that if we just go with a plain reading of the code and leave it at 9 units, there's no need for the secondary variance. There's no need for any variances, and we
That
can
would
just
meet everything.
walk over. Right, exactly. I grant that it does change the rhythm or the appearance coming down Harvey or whatever, but that's really not our problem. We're just looking at it from the standpoint of zoning. I think we could grant no zoning variances at all, and he could still go ahead and build 9 units, and there would be no action required from this board.
If I might,
Or this is not open to public comment.
You'll let the applicant speak again after the board is completed talking. The chair will call on you, sir.
So I agree that Tim does have a valid point. And I know looking at the map, there's several different ways you could arrange the 9 units and still look attractive from the street view. And it would eliminate all the variances.
Yeah. Mr. Mail, do you have
Yes.
anything on your mind as it relates to this case?
Well, yeah, we'll limit it to this case. Yeah, I absolutely agree with Tim's comment, and that's what crossed my mind also. If you look at the zoning code, and that's a virgin piece of property, so you say, oh, the 8 units would be perfect. I can actually get 9 on there. You could take one of those units and just make it a single family unit with an attached garage, and the side yard setback goes away, or the rear yard setback in this case. And there's no reason to ask for a denser population. So it would lose 1 unit, yes, but it would absolutely fit the zoning, and no harm, no foul. He can go ahead and build what he likes. That was my feeling. I mean, it's a virgin piece of property. Why should we be saying, oh, well, you can get, more units on it than are required?
And to build on that, Mr. Mayo, is that the concerns of the 2 neighbors, it's interesting, we've only had the 2 and nobody else has come forward. But the neighbors are concerned about density,
But the
rally, traffic and all that. Pardon?
The 2 neighbors are really speaking about, density and traffic and noise. Well, if he's within the zoning, all of that falls into the bit bucket of,
Becomes
that
moot.
goes with Yeah, it becomes a moot point.
That's where I
Yes,
was
there are
heading
going to
with
be
that.
more traffic. Plus, if it's an over 55, which he has said it will be, or a senior housing unit, there won't be as many teenagers running in and out of there trying to get to their 8 o'clock morning class down at Kent State.
Eric, I saw your hand. Did you have something?
Yes, remember, this would qualify under the Duncan v. Middlefield size and area variances standards. Now, again, we have not changed our zoning code yet. We're working on that, and this is in the proposed zoning code that City Council has not yet adopted. We would follow the Duncan v. Middlefield standards that has been recognized by the Ohio Supreme Court. At this point, the City of Kent zoning ordinance for a variance still requires the factors that we outlined at the beginning of each meeting. But I will remind you, the courts would probably address this under Duncan v. Middlefield standard, which would require the 7 following standards. 1, would the property have a reasonable rate of return if this variance were not granted? Is there any beneficial use for the property without the variance? 2, whether the variance is substantial. 3, whether the essential character of the neighborhood would be substantially altered or whether adjoining properties would suffer a substantial detriment as a result of granting this variance. 4, whether the variance would adversely affect the delivery of government services such as water, sewer, that sort of thing, to the neighborhood. 5, whether the property owner purchased the property with knowledge of the zoning restrictions in place. 6, whether the property owner's predicament can be solved through some method other than a variance. And 7, whether the spirit and intent behind the zoning requirement would be observed and substantial justice be done by granting the variance. Remember, as we've discussed before, no one factor has any more weight than any other. The Supreme Court has not given us a way of rating each of these factors. You do not need to find all 7. It does not matter if you only find one. It is something for you to weigh and determine on your own. And of course, the City of Kent still hasn't recognized these standards formally yet anyways.
Can I interrupt with it's a technological matter. So the city uses the Pro, the account is managed by the clerk of council. She apparently did not give me the right permission because it's telling me our meeting is going to expire in 7 minutes. This happened one other time when she didn't have it set up right. If that happens, please everybody log back into the meeting and it will reopen. I'm not sure what happened, but it's telling me I have 7 minutes and 20 seconds. Just in case everybody disappears, please just log back in if I lose you. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I apologize. I'm writing a sticky note now to talk to her about it.
So considering what Eric just said, and looking at the alternative set of criteria just through that lens for a minute, how much does that or does that not change? I think for my way of thinking, it doesn't necessarily change a whole lot, in that everything can still be resolved, to Tim and Dave's point, without any variance whatsoever. So I do understand kind of where Heather chimed in earlier, that if the lot were subdivided, then those would become side yards and not rear yards, and there would be no variance on that side either. But I think even looking at that first variance for the density, and just stringently following what the code outlines is the formula, to Tim's point earlier, again, kind of blanks out, nullifies that need for a second variance. Other thoughts? And then we'll hear from the property owner after we've weighed in one more time here.
So when I first read the documents, I was thinking, as we often see, two front yards and the difficulty therein, the setback in this case being a 30-foot from the rear. And then going back to my question about what does the rest of the Harvey Street block look like, and it's a 10-foot setback, it kind of put my mind to ease when it came to the 10-foot on the side yard. Now, going to what Eric said, and what we always think about is the percentage being requested. So, 20 feet of 30 is significant, being 66%. And so then I wanted to know, what is the use on the other side down Lake Street? And knowing that that's going to be held permanently in green space or whatever it's designated as. I guess my concern with the setback on Harvey Street is not as concerning as it was coming into the meeting, considering the rest of the neighborhood being at 10 feet for side yards. But I do still have concerns about just the density of the property and us really not meeting the criteria for the acreage required for the number. But then I go to the percentage and I swing the other way, and it's a relatively small amount when considering the whole, and that we're just missing the mark by a little bit. But so I could go either way. I want to hear a compelling argument from others on the density, the 10 units. But those are my thoughts for now.
Well, if I were to, comment on that, the density is set by the zoning code. He can make 9 units with no problems at all. Admittedly, his drawing had 10 symmetrical and identical units, which when you're building something is sometimes easier. But, he has a piece of property, he has the zoning code, he knows what he can do. He's done the right thing and come to the zoning board and said, I'd like to make these variances. From our point of view, I don't see any outstanding reason to make those variances. There's no hardship involved. It's a virgin piece of property. He's going to build on it. There are a lot of multifamily homes on Lake Street already, plus one across the street from him on Harvey. Is that the ideal way for a neighborhood to evolve? I don't know. But people living on Harvey should not be at all surprised if somebody wanted to make the maximum use of that piece of property. He can, with no variance, build 9 units on that, and he's perfectly within his rights to do that according to the Kent zoning code, and that's fine by me.
Tim?
I've said my piece. I guess I'm not moved at this point to a different point of view.
Now, I'll throw my 2 cents worth. I know a lot of these smaller ones we tend to nudge, but I think we really should stick with the code. The code was prepared for reasons that we need to respect, and I don't know what the financial hardship would be of building 9 versus 10 units, or if.
And it doesn't really matter.
No. That's true. That's true.
The project's 8 now, by the way. I've been trying to raise my hand.
Oh, okay.
We're ready to hear you.
Okay. When I submitted this thing, I still didn't like 10 feet apart. And so now I've got it laid out with 8, and I've got it laid out with the 10-foot setback on the side yard or the rear yard, or whatever you want to call it. And it spaces about 20 foot between the
That
building,
would be nice.
which is more in line with everything else going up and down Harvey now. So I'll go along with 8. I don't have a problem. I did look at 9, and it just architecturally didn't do it. It was still really tight. So we backed it off to 8. It looks very nice, but it looks really nice with a 10-foot side yard setback or a 10-foot rear yard setback. So if that makes a difference.
Could I ask you,
Thank you.
Mr. Cohen, could you nudge that to 15 feet?
Sorry.
If I could interject, it may be advisable, since the unit density has lessened, to actually potentially redraw this and see if the
Bring another
variance
plan.
is not needed, because if that's the case,
Well-
I mean, you're asking them to approve something on a drawing that is going to look different.
At this point, since the applicant has said they don't need the first variance, I'm 100% not going to vote to approve that variance. And from my personal point of view, with only 8 units, there's no need for the second variance. So by the applicant's admission, I'm basically in a position where there's absolutely no need whatsoever to grant either variance.
Everyone get ready to re-log in. I can tell this is